The movie begins in the year 2050, where the Earth has been destroyed by environmental hazards, making it impossible for any life form to thrive. One of the few survivors, Nova, a fighter pilot, wears a gas mask to step outside since her computer shows that the oxygen level in the Earth's atmosphere has reduced to 1%. She comes across the skeletal remains of a bird, precipitating that the Earth is no longer inhabitable. Nova is called back to the command center, where she meets Simon, an old man in a wheelchair, and claims that it is time to travel back in the past. According to the plan they have already discussed in length, Nova needs to go back in time and stop an environmental disaster from taking place, which ended up escalating global warming and turning the Earth into the wasteland that it is now. With no time to lose, Nova prepares for takeoff along with an AI robot called ADD. Once she is ready, she launches her spaceship and enters the Earth's orbit. It hurts her to see that the Earth looks like a huge, dusty rock, but she gains her composure and heads for a wormhole that will help her return to the past. Since this time travel mission is still in its experimental phase, Simon reminds her not to change multiple things in the past, as it could mess with the result they are all hoping for. He also advises her to avoid crossing paths with her past self. Nova agrees and enters the wormhole, but shortly after she realizes it is quite different from the simulator back at their base. ADD senses the situation and quickly changes the coordinates. Nova notices that her body begins to transform into her younger version as she accelerates through the trajectory before crash landing in a dark forest. On the other hand, a young boy named Nas is riding his quad bike through the same forest, and he decides to follow the strange ship that just landed nearby. However, he is unable to find it, so he takes a break. ADD approaches him, and after confirming the year to be 2025, it asks Nas to help move the unconscious Nova before anybody else finds her, since the police have also launched their search party. Nas gets Nova to her bike, but just as they are about to leave, the police notice them. Nas speeds away and takes the unconscious Nova to a deserted factory. After laying her in a safe spot, Nas asks ADD to take her to the hospital, but ADD refuses and asks him not to tell anyone about them once he returns home. However, Nas just gathers some essential supplies from his home and goes back to the factory. Meanwhile, the police are scouring the forest and they come across the crashed vehicle. Detective Claire inquires about the two witnesses who fled, but the police don't have any information regarding them yet. Claire visits the nearest home in the vicinity, which is Nas's home. The old man inside informs her that Nas is an orphan and spends most of his time inside his room or on his quad bike in the forest. When they find his room empty, the old man directs Claire to visit the abandoned factory nearby because that is Nas's favorite hideout spot. At the same time, Nas returns to the factory, only to find out that Nova has regained consciousness. The young Nova is perplexed about why she changed into her younger self, which ADD hints could be the side effect of the time travel. Nova then calculates that they are many kilometers away from the place she was actually supposed to land, and they have less than 24 hours to complete their mission. Just then, they hear a car approach them. Claire enters the factory and finds out Nova's stuff, including her spacesuit. Just then, she hears her car start, so she runs outside but is unable to stop Nas and Nova. While driving, Nas asks Nova to tell her the truth, but since she cannot compromise her mission, she offers him money if he drives her to a certain location. In the next scene, Claire returns to the military base on Nas's quad bike and asks if they have found anything about the spaceship. The scientists believe that the ship came from the outside world, and they have managed to find the pilot's fingerprints. However, they are confused, since the fingerprints belong to the same person at two different ages, which is next to impossible to believe. They have narrowed one of the fingerprints set to a 12-year-old girl named Nova. On the other hand, future Nova is happy to see trees as they drive. She asks Nas what he will do with the money once he helps her with the mission. He wistfully says that he will use it to reunite with his dad in South America. Just then, their car slows down with smoke coming out of its hood. Luckily for them, an old man called Altan stops by in his truck and offers to help fix their car at his house nearby. While Nas and Altan work on the car, Nova helps Marion around the house. Meanwhile, Claire visits the original 12-year-old Nova at her parents' house. The parents inform her that Nova was studying last night. Claire notices that the young girl has a lot of interest in space. However, since they have Nova's fingerprints on the spaceship, Claire brings Nova and her parents to the military base, where she observes Nova. When Nova mentions that she wants to grow up to become a fighter pilot one day, Claire and her partner Cohen hypothesize that the other Nova might be a clone of this girl. girl. In the next scene, Altan invites Nas and Nova over for dinner after fixing the car. While they are all at the dining table, Marion asks Nova about her peculiar clothes and ADD. Just then, the news shows Nas as a kidnapper, and it doesn't help Nas when he is unable to show his driving license to Altan and Marion. However, the elder couple decides to help the kids instead of turning them in. Altan provides Nas with a change of clothes while Marion checks on Nova's injuries. Just then, Nova notices a police car heading their way, so she and Nas make a run for it into the cornfields, whereas Altan hides the stolen police car inside his garage to avoid any suspicion. The police officer, an acquaintance of Altan, asks him about Nas or the stolen car, but Altan flatly denies knowing anything. However, somehow the stolen car automatically drives itself out of the garage, and the police see it. While Altan tries to lie about it, a soldier finds Nas's clothes in one of the rooms, which prompts Claire to declare a full-force operation. After that, the police and military spread out through the fields in search of Nas and Nova. One of the soldiers succeeds in finding them near the forest, but Nova shoots him with her gun, which scares Nas. She tells him not to worry since she has just paused the soldiers' time for an hour, after which they make their way through the forest. As the movie goes on, Nova and Nas reach a building guarded by men wearing suits. To avoid the heavy security, they breach the vent and get inside the mansion undetected. There, they hear some men in a private meeting discussing to drill the North Pole. Nova barges inside the room full of rich, influential men and asks to speak privately with the young Simon. However, Simon asks her to speak her mind in front of everyone. She goes on to tell them that drilling the North Pole will release heavy amounts of methane, which will leave the Earth uninhabitable soon due to catastrophic global warming. However, Simon's father does not pay heed to her and has the security escort the kids out. Nova resorts to Plan B, which is tracking the young Simon through ADD so she can convince him, but she notices him being scolded by his father for letting some kids in his company's meeting. Nas and Nova then walk away and reach the sea, where the latter just stares into the majestic waves. On Nas's inquisition, Nova tells him how she is here from the future to prevent a disaster from unfolding, which is why she needs to convince Simon not to let his dad's company drill the North Pole. Meanwhile, Claire examines the slowed-down soldier with Cohen. Physically, he seems fine, but his brain waves are questionable. They are interrupted when Claire gets a call that the two runaways were sighted near the mansion. After reviewing the CCTV footage where Nova planted a device under Simon's car, Claire orders a SWAT team to reach Simon's residence. At the same time, Nova and Nas approach Simon, and ADD plays a holographic message from the future Simon for his younger self, who urges him to stop his father. If he doesn't, the drilling will cause massive floods followed by widespread droughts, which will destroy the planet irreversibly. The young Simon laughs it off, thinking that the kids are pulling a prank. Nas grabs Nova's gun at Simon, but just then, Claire and her team ambush them, and they shoot Nova, who is shielded by ADD, while Nas escapes. He runs all the way back to Altan's home and reiterates the whole ordeal, after which he bursts into tears over his guilt. While Altan comforts him, we see Nova in the hospital, where she tells the whole truth to Claire, while Cohen tries to repair ADD. Claire asks him if time travel is actually true, and Cohen confirms it theoretically, even though they haven't seen anything of the sort yet. Just then, ADD flies away with Nova's gun, and despite their efforts, Claire and Cohen are unable to stop it. Claire notices a confused Simon nearby and tries to talk to him, but seeing his father, Simon claims that Nova is obsessed with climate change and leaves. In the next scene, we see Marion trying to locate Nova, but none of the hospitals have a patient by that name. Just then, Nas notices ADD flying toward Altan's house, so he rushes outside. The poor robot informs them that Nova is in a military hospital and needs his help, after which his battery dies. Nas picks up Nova's futuristic gun and, with Altan's help, goes to the base where Nova is being held. After being instantly arrested for interrogation, Nas is then questioned for his motives by the colonel leading the investigation. When he sees his chance, he shoots the colonel and two other soldiers, after which he finds the weak Nova, grabs her spacesuit from Cohen without shooting him, and tries to escape the military base. Meanwhile, Claire notices the time-frozen military personnel, so she rushes outside but is too late to stop Nas from helping Nova escape in her spaceship. Nova returns to her base, where her body assumes her real age and she is treated for her injuries. When better, she lets them know how the plan failed, and she doesn't want to go through it again. Just then, then a child runs toward Nova, claiming her as its mother. A confused Nova looks up to see a future Nas and understands that the kid is hers and Nas's, which means the future can be changed. She then steps out with the kid in the wasteland and realizes that she needs to correct the timeline for future generations. She agrees to time travel again and joins Nas and Claire in 2025, who are shocked to see her return after the passage of 1 minute. Nova asks Claire to give her gun to Nas, and together she and Nas fly to the North Pole to convince Simon one more time. As they fly, Nas notices similar spaceships accompanying them. When they get there, Nova tries to talk Simon out of it, but his father is adamant about starting the drilling. Hence, Nova and Nas use the time freeze guns to stop him, after which Simon breaks down over his guilt. The other spaceships head to various parts of the world where ecosystems are endangered and stop the humans from making grave mistakes. This prompts the UN to take action to address climate change. Moving on, Nova drops Nas at Altan's house. Altan has managed to fix ADD, which makes Nova very happy, and then she returns to her world after saying goodbye. Altan asks Nas to move in with him and Marion, and he happily agrees. Later, he is visited by Claire, who takes him for interrogation. He tells her that Nova is gone for good and that the white spaceships will return whenever the Earth is threatened. In the end, Claire returns Nas's quad bike to him, and just then, Nas sees the present Nova leave the base in her parents' car. With Claire's acknowledgement, Nas follows Nova's car happily. Welcome, sci-fi fans. Futurist Flicks is thrilled to launch our exclusive membership program, designed for loyal fans like you. By joining, you'll unlock early access to recap videos, unseen recap videos, raffle prizes, free merch giveaways, exclusive content and behind-the-scenes insights, access to community events, live streams, and Q&A sessions. Join the Cosmic Crew today and get instant access to exclusive perks. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more intergalactic adventures.